Hello and welcome to the Mechbay Podcast, your number one stop for mech repairs, upgrades, and especially Battletech tactics. I'm your host, Josh. My co-host today, the always wonderful Dustin.
How you Mech Warriors doing?
And our special guest host today, the only man Comstar pulls over because they, quote, feel like it, Mr. Probable Koz.
How's everybody doing?
We're doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty darn good. It's just the afternoon out here in Southern California, and nice, or sunny Southern California.
Ooh, I'm jealous. I'm very jealous.
Is it really always between 70 and 80 degrees out there?
This is not true.
Okay. I thought it was baloney as well.
No, it gets as low as 40 degrees.
Ooh.
I was there in February. It was 60 degrees. People were apologizing to me being there. I was like, no, it's literally a snowstorm where I'm from. So this is episode 8, and we are going to talk to the wonderful Probable Koz about who he is, what he does, but most importantly, pick his brain on running a Battletech tournament. So for our listeners who may not know you or what you do, to us, you're the modern-day Renaissance man. You're the tabletop player, you're the battle report master, you're a painter of all miniatures, and you're even a YouTube celebrity. So how would you describe yourself?
None of those things. I would say I am a hobby enthusiast who just likes games. They can be tabletop, they can be card games, video games. I just like games, and if you have a cohesive and coherent world that I can kind of like get my hooks into, like Battletech, for example. I mean, it's fully fleshed out. What's not there to like about it?
Hey, about the universe.
Yeah.
I mean, we do have like 30 plus years of lore, forums, magazines, and stuff that we can dig into when we're bored. So we're never hunting for anything for too long.
No, there's a treasure trove of information and knowledge and lore out there for Battletech. It's amazing.
So what got you into Battletech specifically?
So it was actually Mech Warrior 2.
Oh man, take my heart. Was it Ghost Bear's Legacy for you as well?
No, it was the base game.
Oh, see, I never even played that one.
Sitting there at Comp USA, saw the giant yellow and black box with the Mad Cat or Timberwolf. I don't want to piss anybody off.
Yeah.
It just called to me, and I begged my dad, and we got it home and installed it, and chose Jade Falcon initially because you have a choice.
Made the wrong choice at first, but that's okay.
I did, but green was my favorite color at the time, so I mean, went with that, and then played the Clan Wolf side of things, and discovered I was wrong initially.
We all have regrets.
So when did you get into the tabletop side of the Battletech universe?
So mid 90s, I want to say 95, 96, sitting there at Barnes & Noble, walking through the RPG section. They had the old FOSSA box set with the crappy quality plastic miniatures. And something just sparked in my brain. I was like, I played the computer game. This is the same thing. This has got to be great. And bought it, and then I bought City Tech. It was right there with it, that expansion. And got it home. And my enthusiasm quickly evaporated when I started reading the rules. And put it on the shelf for a while, and then came back to it later around like 2000, 2001, when I decided that I wanted to give it another shot, and I sat down and reread the rules and played games by myself because no one I knew wanted to play it. It wasn't until around 2012 or 13 we actually had a local group in Middle Tennessee that kind of wanted to play it as like a secondary game to like Warhammer.
Got to take a break every now and then.
Yep, because everybody needs a side game. You need a side game. And from there, that group kind of grew into the core nexus of the Battletech Middle Tennessee play group, and it's still going. And they've got a bunch of new blood now, and they're playing tons of games now out there, even with all the craziness going on. It figures the moment I leave that it really catches fire. months.
That's unfortunate.
It's all right. I was the one holding it back. It's all me.
I mean, we did just get the clan invasion and the starter box for a game of Armored Combat, so I feel like we are really in that second renaissance for Battletech.
We are. I think those really, it got it back out in the front of the public eye. Like everybody's made, like when I've run, and this is kind of digging into the things like later in the podcast, but when I would run events at tournaments at conventions, people would look at it and go, Battletech's still alive, huh? They do that like dog 90-degree head cock, and then they'd walk away. I think a lot of people just didn't realize it was still going on. You know, it was like a dead game or forgotten. And that Kickstarter with the beautiful, beautiful, beautiful miniatures, it helps.
It's really a 1-2 punch. You know, getting into Battletech would have been so much easier for me when I started if I had a game of Armored Combat.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second step, it would have been so much easier to get people to the table if I had those modern miniatures.
Yep.
So we're in a good place. And
Can you imagine playing 40K today with the miniatures they made in like 89 or 91 solely just with those and trying to sell people on playing 40K?
Yeah, it would have been kind of like playing Battletech at the local game store in 2018.
I don't know. I know some of my friends would specifically go out of their way to purchase those 80s models.
Give it a couple years and it's going to be like that with Battletech. There'll be that nostalgia factor that I really want that Timberwolf that's in 30 different pieces in 6mm scale. I really want that. Not the beautiful plastic one that comes pre-assembled.
We're not bashing anyone, but
No. It's just you gotta marvel at how far it's come. I honestly didn't think the Kickstarter was going to happen. Even, you know, when I sunk in my life savings into it, I was like, I've lost it.
Well, they funded in right. I was surprised at how quickly it funded. I will admit that.
The funding wasn't the problem. I was just worried about the follow through.
Oh, yeah, that's a fair concern.
Yeah, I had never done a Kickstarter before, so I'm very cautious with giving people money for them to hold on to deliver to me later. And I was like, I'm a risk it for this one, and only this one.
I'm sure our listeners people who have listened to the prior podcasts will probably know that both Josh and I felt like Wave 2 was too much to put in escrow, so we're both waiting on that to come to retail.
What, you didn't sell that kidney?
No, it was too much. It was too far out. I was like, I can wait a year. I can't wait 2 years. That's too long. Too much risk.
Plus,
Agreed.
we had the whole pandemic thing. It's like, in a good year, I'll put $150 or more or whatever into the Battletech fund. But in a quarantine, I'm like, this could be a while.
Yep.
When you're playing in Tennessee, did you have a specific era that you guys like to play?
So I would like to use mechs from all eras. I kind of look at Battletech as not just one particular section of time. I like to celebrate everything. So I'll play stuff from Jihad or Dark Age or whatever's coming next, or go all the way to the Star League era with things, and I'll mix and match in my lances. I'm not a fluffy player when I'm playing casually or anything like that. I kind of really go by the rule of cool. I do try to kind of keep things faction appropriate. So if I'm playing clan, try to focus only using stuff that the clans would actually use, or if it's Intersphere, that type of thing.
Now, I've watched your YouTube channel, so I know you do play Classic, but if you were to give a rough percentage of Alpha Strike versus Classic, what would you say it is?
On how much I play?
Yeah. Or what you were playing. We all haven't been playing very much lately.
Yeah, that's true. I would say the majority of the time was Alpha Strike, and it was just because we could get in multiple games in an afternoon versus Classic, where you might get done.
Take some time. So you'd say 90-10?
Yeah, that's about a fair split.
Okay.
But I do enjoy Classic a lot more than Alpha Strike.
There it is.
That's why this is a Classic podcast, because it's the better system.
If you
send your hate mail.
if you like crunchy rules and you like for me, when I play the game, it just kind of, the storyline flows with the gameplay. You know, you got that Code Brown moment when your Atlas pilot takes a headshot and he's smeared all over his console. What do you do then? You know, and I can just see it playing out in my eyes, like every time you roll the dice or you move, like how gracefully or clunky these machines move, how the trees sway as it moves through the hexes. Like I see all that when I play this game, and there's a few games that are like that with me. And to me, Classic is just cinematic. It's an amazing system.
Do you have a favorite mech that you like to put on the table?
Yes, it is the Mad Cat Timberwolf. That is my first love. I can never not love it.
I mean, I think we were all exposed to that one very early on. Like, no matter where you get into Battletech, the Mad Cat's like one of the top images that pops up in anyone's mind.
Yep. And I do have a soft spot for like the unseen, like the Wasp, the Stinger, the Archer, and your classic OGs. They're equally as iconic, albeit for different reasons. A more modern mech that I really love, and I haven't assembled it yet. I'm afraid to, is the Atlas Punisher, the one that's got the Gatling gun from the Dark Age.
The 3, right?
Yeah, the 3.
Nice.
I do love the look of it, but I'm not loving the idea of putting it together.
How many pieces? My favorite was the Tomahawk 2, and by favorite, I mean like, oh my god, I think it had literally 16 bits. Beautiful mech. Nice sculpt. I'm appreciating metal more these days because of, I don't know, I hate myself.
As long as you're good at pinning and you got some really good glue, it's okay.
It's all good.
Industrial grade, mech grade, some might say. So I saw you're working on your Crescent Hawks for this year.
Yes.
You all done with them, or you got any more big plans for them?
I have the 3 Lances, the Command and Battle, and then I can't remember. I don't know what I'm going to call that third one. But I do want to add more to it. I already in my if you look at my other videos, my earlier ones with the yellow and black mercs, like with the primitive archer lance, with the primitive longbow, I have about 24 to 28 mechs painted in that scheme for those mercs. I would love the Crescent Hawks to get that big. The problem is, this is the first faction I've approached in Battletech to try to make it as close to what they are in the fluff. And the Crescent Hawks are highly mobile. They don't have a lot of resources, even though they're kind of bankrolled by, a benefactor a little bit. I just do want, I kind of want to keep them small and nimble. So maybe 1 to 2 more lances, just for variety, or maybe just paint up 8 more mechs to sub out and keep it at 3 lances where I need to be. But they're probably going to be timeline capped to 30-50.
No, setting that kind of like hard limit is always nice, because then you can fill without having to think too far in advance.
Yep. But I may take one of my Clan Invasion Timberwolves and paint it up as a captured Mad Cat. So we'll see. I'm sure that'll anger somebody somewhere.
They'll get over it.
So you also do a lot of battle reports.
Used to, but yes.
So what made you want to do those?
So the guy that actually inspired me to do YouTube is Alchies.
Rest in peace.
Yeah.
He's not dead. He's just, his channel is.
Yeah. Tony, he really inspired me. I used to, when I worked at GameStop as a store manager, when I'd go in early in the mornings, his channel is one of the channels I would listen to. I'd open up the store. Like I would just put on one of his bat reps and just listen and laugh. And he was responsible for rekindling a lot of my love for Battletech as well. And when he stopped, I started around that same time. And it's a shame because his stuff I still think is some of the best bat rep presentation stuff out there. And he's kind of like the measuring stick I kind of hold my bat reps to. And I like, he made me laugh with how he recanted the stories that happened in the game. It was just good. He was just solid, and he's a good guy. I talk to him occasionally. Still, it's one of the few instances where when you meet somebody that not going to say hero, that the heroes, like that old saying, like never meet your heroes because they kind of disappoint you. But like, he was really open and friendly right away.
You said that you still talk to him occasionally.
Yeah. I think, and I don't want to speak for him, but just based on what I think, if there was something interesting, he would do it. I think there has to be a spark.
So a maybe, definite maybe.
Yep.
Probably my last thing is, so what made you like want to do like all the painting guides and stuff? Like, you really are a phenomenal painter.
Oh, thank you. Again, like, the channel is kind of like an extension of my hobby. If anyone watches, that's great. If no one does, that's okay too. I think with miniature gaming, painting kind of goes hand in hand. There are a lot of great tutorial channels out there, and they put their art out there, and I think it's risky for them to put art out there because it's you have people that will hate it or criticize you, so you're basically bearing your soul when you make art. And so for me, I'm more of an introvert, so me putting my art out there and putting myself out there is a challenge to me to kind of break out of my shell a little bit, but also kind of share what I've done. So if someone goes, I really love how you weathered that mech, how do I do that? Or it challenges them to figure out how to do it on their own. I think you can be inspired by people putting stuff out there. Now, I don't think I'm like the best painter in the world. Clearly not. Otherwise, I'd be running like a Etsy shop for commission paintings or something like that. But I do appreciate everybody saying that I paint very well, but I think it could be improved.
It takes a lot of courage.
It does. Like anyone that's in these painting groups on Facebook, and you post your first miniature and it's of a Space Marine and they've got googly eyes because you couldn't get the eyes right. You are one of the bravest people in the world to show that off. Because you are opening yourself up to being ripped apart. And not everybody has the same skill level. Not everybody's able to paint like a master painter. But as long as you're satisfied with it and you think that it's good enough for what you need it to be, then do it and enjoy it. And don't let anyone like tear you down or say it sucks or anything like that.
Wise words.
But if those words do cut to you, just get into the shower in the fetal position and cry. That always feels a lot better.
No. Over here, we always say like a badly painted mech. Like, I don't care if it has globs of paint on it. It's better than bare metal or...
It is. Unless you're rolling with the fluff that it's factory fresh.
Oof.
Before they applied any paint whatsoever.
Better still have that caution tape around the legs, just in case. All right, for hobby news, Probable. I'll let you lead off. Have you gotten anything done? Anything hobby-wise?
What I'm doing right now is I'm finishing up my Crisis Protocol box set and doing some experiments with acrylic inks.
Ooh.
And trying to make my own washes.
You're a bold man. Are you going to put that on anything specific or just like trying to see how it works?
Just trying to see how it works. I've got my little chemistry kit here and I'm testing everything out. And the video I did on the display board was me kind of fooling around with inks and seeing how they reacted versus what washes do. Like your over-the-counter washes from GW or Secret Weapon miniatures, that type of thing. And there is a different learning curve to them. They are different.
Do you have alcohol-based wash or ink, rather?
Yes, I do. I have some stuff from AK Interactive.
Nice.
And in fact, that weathering stuff from them is just a joy to work with. It pulls out results that I don't think you really can get with acrylic. You can get really, really close, but I think there's something to the oil-based being a supplemental tool when you're painting.
Josh?
I have still been moving, actually, so My hobby progress is I found my box of Battletech stuff. As bad as that sounds, it got moved, put into a closet, and I looked around for it. Like, I don't even have a hobby table yet, still. I'm just glad that I found them. I did inventory. Pretty much everyone's there. Might have to do a couple repairs on a couple boys, but that's about it.
Progress in progress.
Found my dice, found my tape measure, found my mechs. I'm good to go.
When I moved, I had to do some repair work on a few metal ones too.
Yeah, I'm expecting my revenants to have multiple legs broken off. I will say I have a project in mind that involves the scrapyard at Ares Games and Miniatures. So they are like one of the few places that you can buy Battletech bits from, like just a specific arm or leg. So I've got a couple conversion projects planned once I get all my hobby area ready. They have like a great selection of mechs and vehicles, so I'm starting to make a wish list for once I can start playing again. I'll drop a link to them in the show notes so everyone can find them. What about you, Dustin?
I've actually been a little busy this week. My Battletech hobby fire is slowly being kindled. I did some quick work on Davian Guard for a patron. He was asking about how to do a quick and dirty paint, or maybe not quick and dirty, but simple paint scheme. So I was doing some experimenting with an oil base paint, spraying that through the airbrush, and then removing it with mineral spirits over an acrylic base. Something I picked up on YouTube, giving it a try, experimenting with that. And as always, also working on a little bit of 40K terrain, because this is secretly a 40K podcast.
It's the side girl, right? That's all you have to say.
It is. Don't worry, Battletech. I'm spending more time with you than 40K. That's a lie right now, but soon.
No, so how'd that paint work out for you?
Pretty good. I had a success and a failure. I did my experiment on a Stinger. It went pretty well. I tried to scale it up to a Battle Master, especially being Lion Guards, and I think I had an issue with the primer. I got a lot of tearing when I was pulling the ink spray. It's not an ink, the oil base. I literally went to the hobby store or the art store, got some oil-based paints, a cheaper set, mixed it up, thinned it out with mineral spirits, and sprayed it through the airbrush. Just turned the whole mech into a black mess, let it set for maybe about 30 minutes, and pulled it off with a sponge and some mineral spirits. And got some tearing on the Battle Masters. But I think it was the primer's fault. It was still tacky, and it had been drying for a month, so more experimentation and data needed.
See, I also had problems with putting paint on my Battle Master, and I thought it was the primer, but now I'm starting to suspect it might be the release agent from the models themselves. Like, the primer just not sticking to it great and having like that weird surface area on top, so the paint's not actually sticking as well as we think.
My Battle Master has had a very thorough cleaning. I did strip it, so hopefully this time it'll all stick.
Extra clean. We've got 2 shoutouts this week for our patrons. Cadet Harris, call sign Ramshackle, in his trusty Cataphract 4L, and Mech Warrior Reese, call sign Longshot, piloting in his 80 tons of Zeus 6T. It's been a blast talking to these guys on our new Discord channel, talking lands composition and painting techniques. So let's take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsor.
Are you not sure what you want to do with your life? Thinking about college but don't have the bankroll of a large house? Why not consider the school Comstar News and the MRBC called Adequate, Somerset Military Academy. At Somerset, we're dedicated to getting you a degree in your choice of Battle Mech or Aerospace Fighters. Located coreward in the Lyran Commonwealth, we are a safe and secure place to hone your skills with that family war machine. The only combat you will see out here is in our top-of-the-line simulators. Apply today to be selected for early admission to our fall semester.
So now to the meat of this week's podcast. You want to run a tournament. So a tournament is the kind of semi-obvious conclusion to structured play and months of pickup games at your local game store. We are playing a game that is capable of being competitive. A tournament is a great way to bring the community together, maybe get some new players into the game. And some people, if you're familiar with Magic the Gathering, they talk about the 3 personalities. That exists in Battletech too. So you want to give your competitive players a venue to be competitive. So running a tournament, in my opinion, is a great thing to do. But actually running the tournament is a whole can of worms that we will talk about today. We brought Probable Koz onto the podcast this week because in addition to running a fantastic YouTube channel, he has also run some tournaments. So I've only run one tournament. I've only participated in one tournament, and I felt like I needed a little extra knowledge and wisdom. So why would you run a tournament, Probable? Or why did you find yourself running a tournament?
I think the core reason I decided I wanted to run the tournament was that I believe in the game, and I've run events for other games too. When you're passionate about a game, you want it to succeed, right? You want people to play it, to celebrate it, and that's why I ran, and I would run again, Battletech tournaments or events. But I would do that for any game that I really believe in. It's also a way for your players and your play group to kind of experiment and try different things that they normally wouldn't do in casual play. Casual play, you might bring something silly like a silly list. But for a tournament, you kind of may bring something that's a little bit more tailored for something else, where it makes the player step out of their comfort zone a little bit.
I feel like we try to be, especially in Battletech, we're trying to get as many players into the game as possible. So we bring a really lighthearted attitude to the pickup games. And in the tournament, it's a great time to be serious. And, there's a great excuse in a tournament to, serious business, make a real list, play competitively.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you have to have that outlet, because you're going to have some players that are only going to be satisfied in a competitive environment versus casual, and vice versa. But a tournament is a good way to get everybody to kind of get together, both sides of that. And especially if you run a tournament at a convention, that puts more eyes on your game and what you're trying to get across, that maybe the next time the engagement will be bigger.
Yeah, 2 people playing Battletech is nice to look at, but seeing like 6, 8, or even 10 or even more people really draws people's eyes. Like, people that are playing Magic the Gathering will actually look at you and look to see what you're doing when they see multiple people playing the same game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a spectacle at the local game store. Josh, have you ever thought of running a tournament?
I've not run a tournament, but I did participate in your tournament. It was still pretty fresh into my Battletech career. I think this was like early 2019. It was honestly the kick in the butt that I needed to get all of my mechs, like actually go out, buy mechs that I wanted rather than proxy, paint those mechs, base them, and because nothing lights that fire under me than, I hate to say it, but like being better than someone, either at painting or playing or doing anything like that, than having like direct competition. Like, no, my mech is painted better than yours, thus I win.
Yeah, you're a player that needs that venue, and you kind of thrive in the tournament setting, right? It gets the hobby pressure going. You gotta get that stuff painted, because that counts. Well, for my tournament, it counted. Probable, did it count in your tournament?
No, because the tournaments that I ran, I did kind of like strongly suggest that you should have your miniatures painted, but because the group was small and I didn't want it to be a barrier to prevent anyone that might want to play, I did not require it painted. I think at this point, if I was still with the group, everybody's got painted miniatures, that I think I would make it a requirement, or at least give some sort of benefit in the tournament. Like, you get a free re-roll once during the tournament if your whole force is painted, something like that, to where there's the incentive for the player to take that extra hobby step.
Yeah, I wanted as many people at my tournament that I could get at my tournament, because especially at that time, Battletech was a small game. So I did a lot of asking of what people wanted in the tournament, and I got a little pushback on painted miniatures and no proxies. But I was convinced, I think mostly by Josh, that you got to have, you don't have to, but it helps to have pretty miniatures on the table.
It does.
I was surprised that I had people who expressed that they didn't want to paint their miniatures, and they showed up with painted miniatures. So I think it was a good thing. But I may have excluded somebody. that I didn't get to ask that question. So 6 of one, half a dozen the other.
You weren't asking for like showman's piece, like trophy winning paint. You were just like 3 colors. Like, it's honestly, like, to go back to one of our early episodes, it's a lot of the respecting your opponent and respecting their mechs and their time.
So you may have decided that you want to run a tournament, but now you have to actually figure out how to run a tournament. For me, never participating in a tabletop wargame tournament, and then deciding that I was going to run a local tournament. There were a lot of details that I had to think about and figure out. So, first of all, in a tournament, you want the players to play a balanced game. Nobody wants to play a tournament that's lopsided. Probable, how did you try to create balanced play in the game?
So for Battletech, it's kind of hard. There's no real, official packet to kind of, lead you, to give you breadcrumbs on how and what to choose, what's legal, what isn't. So for me, I thought it was more important to lock down, okay, let's say era. You can lock down the era and go from there, nothing past a certain point in time. Or you can say there's a unit restriction. So for example, in the one event that I ran, it was that you could bring any 8 units you wanted, 2 lances, and they just had to fit a certain point total. So
when you say point total, just in case we haven't touched on it yet, you were running Alpha Strike tournaments, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So for that, it was, you got 400 points to spend on 2 lances. What are you going to do? And so you'd have some people that get creative and have 4 lances as small little vehicles. And then the rest was all put into the lance of mechs. Then you'd have other people that would just kind of spread it out over all of it, have a well average balanced team over the 8 pieces. But again, Alpha Strike, you have to make, with Alpha Strike particularly, you have to kind of make choices with how you want to balance things and what you perceive as balance. Do you allow combined arms? Well, if you allow combined arms, do you think it's fair in Alpha Strike that battle armor can hop on an Epona and an Alpha Strike be across the board in your opponent's deployment zone first turn, depending on what tweaks they take? And if you allow the combat manuals, the Krita and Mercenary stuff with all those extra features that are in there, does that throw things out of balance? And you just got to kind of weigh everything.
Yeah, I felt like as a tournament organizer, I was a cheese sniffer. You have to get ahead of the cheese. People, especially in a competitive setting, and I don't blame them for it, are going to try to win. But there's an amount of stinky cheese, I feel, that, I haven't played in any tournaments, I only ran one, but I assumed that other people wouldn't enjoy the cheese so much. So,
what are you referring to as the cheese?
So I felt like getting ahead of particular chassis because the battle value, and I'm talking classic Battletech. I ran a classic Battletech tournament. There are certain chassis that might be
unbalanced.
Yeah, you can squeeze a little more out of them than what their BV might say because, no balancing system is perfect. So I felt like an easy way to get ahead of that was to require that everybody run only one chassis and one variant within that chassis. So no chassis repeats, which gets rid of your variant repeats. That's kind of redundant. But anyhow, and I was running classic Battletech, and it was a lance. I also put restrictions on force composition, so you had to run 4 mechs. You had a battle value cap, and all your mechs had to be different.
I mean, you're always going to have people that are going to min-max in a tournament.
I try to create a system to not discourage min-maxing, but make sure that was balanced. But I think we'll get to that a little bit later. Okay, so do you think you have anything else to say about balanced play?
The one thing I would say is I was pretty transparent when I was creating my tournament documents with my players. And as I was constructing them, I used the Facebook group as a feedback for the different rules, where I would bounce it out there for them to kind of decide if they felt it was fair or it was, unbalanced or broken. And there were a couple things that we missed, and I think it's because everybody secretly hoped that they would slide through.
Sneak in.
And as much as I want to have a purely balanced event where everybody can have fun, I am kind of like the Joker in The Dark Knight, where I just want to see the world burn. So watching horrible things happen during the event and just chuckling as the organizer, I mean, that gives me enjoyment. But overall, I mean, as long as it's not to the detriment of the players having fun, and I think I achieved that with what I did with Battletech, or with Alpha Strike rather, with the events. I think everybody had fun. There are a couple surprises here and there. Didn't allow like off-board artillery or anything crazy like that.
So a tournament has to have a winner, and you have to
Mhm.
have rounds. You don't have to, but typically there's rounds, so
It helps.
multiple people can play. How did you do a round robin? Did you do seeded? How did you score your tournament?
So yeah, so I can't take credit for this. I used to run tournaments for Decipher, and they were a card game company that made the Star Trek CCG and the Star Wars CCG back in the day. And they had this modified Swiss model of how they ran events. And to me, it's it's simple and it's elegant, and it's an easy way for the tournament organizer to run the event. So it was based on, if you had two different scores, you had a victory point score and you had your differential score, or what your basic points value score would be. So if you won your game, you got 2 victory points. If you drew, you got 1. And if you lost, obviously you got 0. But even if you lost, depending on what happened in the game, you still got points, and that goes in your differential score. So you would, after each round, stack everybody up in victory point order, and then do the pairings on, well, so-and-so had the next level of differential, so they get paired off, then go down the list and keep pairing off based on victory points, then who's the next person closest differential to them to fight or to play.
So it was like a 2-tier seeded system.
Yeah.
Did you have any quirks with that? I know I had 2 players that played each other in 2 separate rounds, and because I ran a strictly seeded matching system.
So I always hate, the one thing I always hated when I played card games was getting paired up with somebody that I'd already played. And you go to a tournament and you want to play against a variety of people in different styles. It's the only way you improve as a player, if you're competitive, or if you're a social gamer and you just want to meet new people. It doesn't help you to play the same person twice in the same event. So I would do pair downs or pair ups. I would swap the matches if it looked like someone was going to play each other again.
In hindsight, it was one of the things I was most disappointed with in my tournament, is that I had, the finalist match. They had played each other in the first round, so I thought that was a little anticlimactic. I'll have to look into how to fix that if I run another tournament one day.
Well, if you do a playoff at the end, I don't see anything wrong with that being like the final. But I mean, in the normal, like if you're running 5 rounds and then a playoff for the 5th round, I mean, yeah, I probably wouldn't have anybody match up in the normal regular 4 rounds.
Look at this guy getting 5 rounds of classic Battletech in a day.
Yeah. Forgot we're talking about classic. Sorry.
I mean, we had ours down pretty pat, like time-wise. I think it was 120 minutes. No, it was like 100 minutes.
I could look through my tournament notes, but it was something like that. It was like an hour and a half plus 15 minutes or something.
Hour and 45 with a 15-minute setup.
15-minute setup. I think you gave him too much time.
Oh, yeah, it was way too much time, but we just didn't know how long everyone would take, so we were erring on the side of caution.
When it comes to scheduling the tournament, you have to get the tournament done, and coming up with a timeline, an amount of time that a game was going to take. You can't just have everybody blast each other off of the table, especially in Classic, because that takes too long. Maybe you had a different experience with Alpha Strike, but I had to be real rigid with, I had a whole sheet with the timeline for the day. What did you encounter with your tournament?
Well, with any tournament, whatever you expect is going to happen, whatever the game plan is, throw it out the window. Because there's always going to be a monkey wrench, or there's always going to be a question or a scenario that pops up that you have to deal with and resolve. Maybe you didn't think about something.
Yeah, I tried to foresee any rules interactions or player disagreements, and I tried my hardest, and I still had a situation arise where I had to make a judgment call that I really didn't want to make in my tournament. Just making a call, a situation that I hadn't foreseen. So
Right.
yeah, no matter how much you plan, I feel like you're going to get a monkey wrench, which is, with experience, maybe you'd have less. But I've only run one, so.
You know, was it a rules question that came up where you had to make your ruling?
Yeah, and it wasn't a rules. No, I mean it was a rules question. It had to do with force withdrawal, and as it's laid out in the Battletech manual or the Total Warfare book, and it basically came down to does somebody get a turn to walk their mech? I hadn't specified how many of your movement points you had to use in force withdrawal. So if somebody was going to get an extra turn of firing or not, now I know better. I'll try to figure out how to squash that situation, because you want your tournament to run as smoothly as possible with the least amount of wrenches.
Yep. Do you feel like you made the right choice in your judgment?
I don't know, because at that I was put in a position where I was basically picking a side, and I really didn't want to be in that position. You have two players, and it's Battletech. It was friendly enough. I don't think there were any hard feelings, but I wanted to be as impartial as possible. But I was put in a position where I had to make a partial call.
I mean, they're never easy. As long as, like, anytime I've made a wrong call, and trust me, I have with rules. If you feel like you made the right one, that's awesome. But I think the biggest thing is, too, if you make the wrong one, owning it and talking to the player afterward, saying, like, I made the bad call at the time or whatever. Just being transparent, I think that also helps a lot, too. Force withdrawal is a funny thing.
Yeah, I would either have to use an alternate house rule, like force punch out occasionally in our casual games. Instead of withdrawing off the map, we just say that the pilot punches out once they're in a force withdrawal state. I'd either run that or completely get rid of it if I were to run a tournament again, I think.
Yeah, because we only spent the next, 2 years talking about force withdrawal and its inherent problems and bonuses.
Yeah, and the classic mech rolling around on the ground, firing off shots that's technically not in force withdrawal, even though it's missing a leg.
Yeah. We because I used force withdrawal for Alpha Strike in the events that I ran, and the one thing I noticed was it wasn't any big. It didn't really hurt any players because they would get at least 1 to 2 turns of firing still with that mech, maybe at long range, but at least they still got something to do with it before it walked off the board. But I do like that idea that they automatically punch out, once they've got enough holes in their mech to look like Swiss cheese.
Yeah, I was running it as a time constraint too, because a game of classic Battletech can take some time, and you've only got so much time in a day to run a tournament, so I figured I'd throw that in there.
I mean, your venue's got to close. People got to go home and see their families.
Yep. And speaking of venues, how did you find a place to host your tournament?
So for Battletech, I got really, really lucky. I knew the gentleman that was running events like NashCon in Nashville, Tennessee, and got in good with him. And started off pretty slow, just asking for maybe 4 tables worth for 8 players, and I was lucky enough to get it. For stores, when I've run events there, like little mini tournaments or just a get together place, I mean, I just partner up with the venue, the store, and just ask. Go, hey, we would love to play here, and we would love to be customers here, or we would love for you to carry the stuff, and maybe we can get more interest.
Yeah, engaging the owner of the store was very important. Communicating, keeping on top of that communication for finding
Oh yeah,
a venue is important. It took me, it wasn't a lot of trouble, but it was a little bit of trouble to find a place to run the tournament. And as a person who had never played a tournament or, run one, I didn't understand that the store was going to take a cut and that everybody would have to spend their money at the store, which in hindsight makes a ton of sense. The store has to make money too. But I was really unprepared for this and had to change some things up with my prizes. I found that I had to make prizes. I felt like people needed something to take home.
So the store you ran the event at took a cut.
Yeah, they took a 25% cut off the top of my head. I can't really remember, but they took a cut of the prize pool, which is...
Oh, wow.
Okay, so you didn't experience that.
No, I mean, I've experienced that in the past in different ways, but never with tabletop gaming. Always with like card games or something like that. I've experienced that with, like if you're playing like a sealed deck format tournament, obviously you buy the product in the store, for those that play card games. Or maybe like $5 entry fee, and then it gets recycled into like a store certificate for store credit for the full value.
Right, and yeah, the prize money being tied to the store that was hosting the event was what pressured me to make physical prizes. Josh, you took one of those home, didn't you?
Yeah, so I took the best painted prize because I'm an actually terrible mech warrior.
So yeah, how did you feel about the prize situation at the tournament that I ran, since you actually played in it?
So I won the best painted one, which was, you made like a nice little wooden coaster style plaque that says best painted Mech Warrior, 2019 or something. And there actually was, if I remember right, a small cash prize for that. I think it was like the 25%.
It was one of the 25%, yeah.
And honestly, I was more happy with the homemade coaster than I was with the prize money. Like, I don't go to Warhammer tournaments or the one Battletech tournament trying to get rich. Like, nobody gets rich playing tabletop miniatures games. If you know someone that's getting rich, let me know, because they're either a unicorn or they're just like an urban legend that just goes around. But like, I'm not doing this for the money. I'm doing it for either bragging rights. I'm doing it just to meet new people. Like, that's where I met Denim. That was my first interaction with him, and he creamed me. Like, he took a very skewed list and he creamed me, but I was not doing it for the prize. I was just happy to be there, happy to meet new people, getting a little like memento. Like, I've been to tournaments where they just give like, here's the pin, like everyone gets a pin, and then like the number 1, 2, and 3 get the slightly larger pins. Like, I've won a tournament. I've won first place at like a 30-man tournament, and the number 1 prize was a piece of paper that just like, you were number 1 with like a golden bee on it, like straight up, like clip art style, and it says that.
But that's bragging rights, right? You can hang that on the wall.
Bragging rights. Like, I don't care about the money.
Probable, have you had like separate prize streams, kind of like I ended up having to do?
Yeah, so I made trophies. I went to Michael's, got like little plinths, stained them, got different plastic mechs that I was never going to use.
You dug your urban mechs out of the trash can where they belong.
So no, but I did actually make an urban mech. I went and fully painted an urban mech for the event and made it if you got last place, you got the urban mech.
Oh, that's an awesome prize. What a great idea.
But it was fully painted. But whereas and it was magnetized to its little plinth, so you could put it on the plinth or, play with it. And I did the same thing for the other trophy mechs, but those were all painted gold. So you got a fully painted mini if you got last place. Whereas if you won, you just got something that's gold spray paint. You could play with it, but it's not as cool as that fully painted Irby.
Yeah, I really like what you said, Josh. That's something I didn't do in my tournament, was some sort of a memento to at least, say that I was there. I'll definitely do, a participation award, because those count.
I will say, depending on which avenue you go to, because the first big event I ran, I did something like that. I went out to a guy that makes laser etched tokens, and I made initiative tokens for the event. Yeah, so the cheaper you can do it on, like if you have a small player base, do it on the cheap. Don't be like me and spend a lot of money out of pocket on something that you still have dozens left over with.
Yeah, I didn't want to sink a ton of money into the prizes, which is why I was like furiously hand planing pieces of walnut in my shed the weekend before the tournament. I was like, oh god, I have to do something, but I don't have money.
The players really always respond well to something that's for sounding corny, but from the heart, from the organizer. If you put a lot of thought and care into the prizes and you run a really good event, it makes an impact on people, and they'll remember it. It'll mean a lot to them.
That's good for the community.
One of the big ones for like the Warhammer tournaments around here is like they're literally just wax seals, no ribbon or anything, and it's just like the guy took a skull, like a little like Michael's Halloween skull, melted a candle down, pushed it in, and it's just a wax seal. And, like, hands those out. Thanks for coming, and it's like it's great. I've got like 20 of them upstairs right now.
Nice.
That's awesome.
So like just the hexes, and like you could spray paint like them gold or something. Like I said, you're not doing it for the big prize. You're not doing it for the money, but just something that you can walk home with and be like, cool, put this in the display shelf so I can always look at it. It's nice. I mean, if you want to get crazy or you really love your players, go ahead and buy like 3 old mechs from Ares Games and paint them up gold, silver, and bronze and have them as trophies. Your players will appreciate really anything you do for them. So Dustin, why don't you talk about why your rules and scoring system was convoluted for a newer player like me?
So when it comes to rules and scoring, I was really worried about having a tie. I didn't want to have to break any ties. I didn't want to have to make a judgment call. Once again, I didn't want to have to insert any bias into the tournament. So I kind of came up with my own personal, and we have all of our documentation from our respective tournaments, and we'll go ahead and link that when we do our show notes. But I came up with a really granular scoring system, and I had a couple of close calls with scoring, even after doing an intentionally granular scoring system. I was just kind of lucked out that I didn't have to do any tiebreakers or make any tough calls. How did you approach that?
Battletech is, at least in these events that I ran, I viewed it more like European football. And sometimes in war, you have decisive winners and you have not so much, right? Where it's both forces took a licking and they draw. So I didn't worry too much about having anything that's like a draw. It would just be like I said with how I did the scoring with the victory points, they would just get a victory point, and whatever point wise they scored based on the scenario, or if it was kill points, that would be their differential score and just move on. I didn't want to get too Alpha Strike's not a game you want to get too out in the weeds on too.
You save that for the classic.
Yeah, like because the more you add to it, it becomes classic. Like the last few games that I played of Alpha Strike with my group, we were adding in all sorts of extra rules, and at some point we're just like, why don't we just play classic? Because we've basically turned Alpha Strike into that. So for me with Alpha Strike, just keeping it simple, and if there's a tie, don't worry about it. It just happens.
I mean, as a kid, I will say that I have been tied, and we've done rematches for like the number one. This was like Boy Scouts or Cub Scouts, like little derby car races, and like we did like 3 redos to determine the winner, and it was equal all 3 times. And they were like coin flip, like. And I lost that coin flip, and I remembered it to this day. But I also realized, 7-year-old me remembers that I lost the coin flip because I chose.
Those scars run so deep.
But I also understand it's like ties do happen, and at that point, life's not fair, so you can't win them all. But I do think having like it comes down like having your paint score, like whoever had the higher paint score is the one. Like having something that's abstract enough that, well, he won because X rather than tied is actually important for me.
Okay, so trying to reward perhaps, the more effort if possible.
Yeah, like it doesn't have to be too much. It's like y'all both scored the same points, but he had more stuff left on the field, so he wins. Like any reason that my brain can use to let me sleep that night, I'm okay with.
Yeah, I think I had, and I didn't have to use it, so I don't know how effective it is, but I think I had some sort of, if there was a tie in victory points, it would come down to who destroyed the most battle value, or who crippled the most, or who removed the most valuable limbs. But yeah, I never got to test that system. So,
but your scoring was also like extremely granular from my perspective, like too much so.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
The more complicated it is, the more headache you're going to have at the end of the day. The bigger the headache you're going to have at the end of the day.
So I had, I had a master list where I kept track of all the points, all the accumulated points throughout the tournament. 1, to pair people, and 2, to, keep track of everybody's scores. I'd also printed individual sheets for, I don't remember if it was per player or per game, but they would be filled out. It was per game, and they would be filled out and turned into me. And I kind of kept those all on hand because I wanted to be able to audit the tournament. And a question did come up, and I was really glad that I had that paper trail, because I was really able to go like, nah, this is what happened. See, here's the game sheet. Here's the score. All right, here's the math. How did you keep track of, the scoring in your tournament or your tournaments? I keep on, doing singular, but you've run multiple.
No, you have a score sheet for every player. Like for mine, it would be their name, what force they're playing, their point value, and then, because we ran 5 games or 4 games, there would be slots pre-filled out with, like I created an Excel format, spreadsheet, and it would be, who they played against in round 1, victory points, differential, and that, and just log it that way. There's going to be, again, like for me, the simpler it is for the bookkeeping, the better. I don't want to make it too complicated that blood shooting out my nose halfway through the event. Or I want to drink, 15 minutes in. I don't, it has to be, I have to have fun while running the event at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't want it to feel like work. So again, like for me, I always set up my score sheets very simply. They might be a little too oversimplistic, but again, I go back to running those early CCG events, and those score sheets were really simple, easy to lay out. It was very always clear and transparent on where the standings were based on that, and I really, really like that. I think it's the easier the better, but without sacrificing anything to the detriment of the players. Like, it's not like on Post-it notes or anything like that. There is an actual sheet, that's laid out to keep track of everything.
So I'll start with you, Josh, because you actually played in the tournament I ran. We'll do kind of like a, hindsight's looking back. If I were to do anything, I've already covered a couple of things throughout the, the session, what I would do differently if I ran another tournament. But, give me some comments and critiques. What would you like to see different?
Oh, so this is where I get to be the Frank Costanza, I got a lot of problems with you people, and now you're going to hear about it.
That's right. Let them rip.
From my all 5+ years of just random all the tournaments, like I already said, the scoring was a little too granular. Like, there were no real missions. Like, we were literally just doing 4-on-4 classic Battletech, but the scoring was like limb an enemy mech, or you cripple an enemy mech, or you destroy an enemy mech. Like, there were different point values for each one. So like, I was having to spend more time keeping track of, is my mech disabled? Does this count as limb? Does this count as crippled, rather than actually playing a lot of the time?
So you had your record sheet for your mechs, and then you had the extra record sheet for the tournament, and it was a little onerous.
Like, in the absence of missions, which I will say that's probably my biggest gripe, was, okay, it's just 4 games of classic Battletech without a objective or anything. It's just mech on mech, and
yeah, it was a smash fest.
Yeah,
basically.
And having to keep track of all that kind of hurt me mentally. I was newer. I will say that I didn't fully understand forced withdrawal at the time. So, all right, what is forced withdrawal? And I have to go to the rulebook and, okay, it's this, and then I have to look at my record sheet, go, is it right? No, yes, maybe. Ask the person across from me. So,
looking back, before COVID kind of threw a wrench in running any future tournaments, I was definitely planning on running a tournament every year. And that was the biggest thing I saw looking back, was a total lack of objective games. And it's also a great way, I was thinking at the time, to force people to create diverse lists, was running objective-based games. And this is, unbeknownst to me, this is like literally the way tournaments are run. Like, you have objective rounds, right?
yeah, so I took like a light mech. Kurt, I know, took a light mech. And the light mech, there was no reason to take light mechs for this tournament, rather than trying to take 3 larger heavy mechs, or an assault if you could, and squeeze in that BV and just have like all right, well,
Yeah.
I took my 500 BV Locust or something, and it sits in the back doing nothing. There was that. So missions really would have just, I don't want to say overshot any of the glaring problems, but I think that was hey, this gives a reason to play a different way than what you would normally do on a pickup game day. But thankfully, that pushed us to start working on missions to be used for things like that. But still, I wouldn't trade playing that day for anything. It was still a 10 out of 10 experience.
So there was a lack of missions. There was perhaps too much bookkeeping in the rounds of the tournament. Was there anything else that happened in the tournament or around the tournament that you had any critiques on?
No, that was probably it. I mean, the timing was kind of weird. Like, all right, 15 minutes to set up. Well, it's 1 sheet and 4 mechs, and we're just waiting for the go-ahead.
Oh, so you guys had a little too much setup time.
Yeah, too much. Like I know, and the problem with all tabletop miniature game players is they want to be social, but
Guilty as charged.
like I say, save the socialness for after the game. Finish up, get done with what you're doing, and then you can go and get that beer.
Yeah, and there was a lunch break in my tournament, and that was a great time to do that socializing, and plenty of it happened.
So I'll ask Probable, did you decide to do missions for your tournaments, or were you just doing pure Alpha Strike, and who's the better Alpha Strike player?
So I took the scenarios out of the Mercs books and I believe it's the Alpha Strike Companion, and I kind of tweaked them to be more competitive friendly, because they already had like victory points and objectives to go after in these types of games. So it was just basically assigning a point value to it, for lack of a better way of putting it, monetizing the value of the objective. So like when you sit on the objective for a tournament, for a turn, that's 25 points. You may actually run a mission on a particular round that it's, because it would change every round. Every round was a different objective. One of them, I do believe, was straight up just kill each other. So it was how much damage can you just straight do, and then you count your total win value was based on how much you destroyed. I think sometimes just having like just an old firefight, scrap them all and let God sort them out. I think it's cathartic in a way, and fun.
Yeah, at least one of those rounds per tournament, right?
Yeah, you need that, because at some point when you're playing in a tournament, your brain turns to jelly.
Game three, you're just ready to go home. You're like looking for an excuse to say, did I lose? Did I die? Okay, cool. Shake hands. I'm going to go grab a beer and sit in my car and just like think about why I came here today.
Reevaluate all your life choices up to this point.
If I didn't mention it before, I did lose every game.
There's no shame in that.
But you learned so much, right, on that day?
I did learn that the only thing that matters is the paint on the mechs.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen.
At least you didn't create like backstories, intricate backstories for all your mech pilots, and like you have to write all those letters home to their families that they didn't make it.
That's for the campaign tournament episode. We're not even going to talk about that.
So did you have any, like, a couple of quick fun anecdotes or quirks or general remarks about, being a tournament organizer and running, making and then executing a tournament?
For me, I think it's a lot of fun just kind of like kibitzing with everybody. you get to be the social butterfly with everybody rather than just locked at a table every round with one person. For me, the real joy besides socializing is seeing like a group of people having fun playing a game, and you're responsible. You're the reason they've all come together to play it.
The best thing about tournament day for me was having even a person who I'd never seen, didn't play in our local group, just thank me, and somebody bought me a burger, and they were all just like, thanks for putting this on. And I was like, oh man, I'm getting so much like serotonin and feel good chemicals right now.
It truly is a feel good, especially when you know that like some of these players in your community, this might be the only time they get a chance to play for months because of either busy schedules or just the way timing works. It does feel good, feelsgood.gif.
One big thing is you do have to announce this with ample time because people will take off work and like rearrange family things to go to these. Like it's not just pickup day. It's, honey, I'm going to a Battletech tournament. What? I'm going to a Battletech tournament and there's nothing you can do that can stop me. When is it? Oh, it's in like 6 months? Okay, that's not a problem.
Yeah, when I went to book the venue, they were like booked out 6 months. So I was like, oh, great. Everybody will actually have plenty of time.
Yeah, booking it, advertising it, giving plenty of lead time.
Yeah, super important. I would
is.
Definitely agree. So hopefully we inspired you to run your local tournament, and hopefully you'll find this episode helpful. You'll find my tournament rules and Probable's tournament rules. These are living documents. But where they're at right now, we'll link those so you can take a look through them and maybe build something for your community, with a little inspiration from us in this episode.
Even if you don't plan on running one, you can always find someone who's probably willing to and just support them by either helping them out or just going to the tournament that they throw.
Yeah, you need people in the seats. That was my number one fear, was that nobody was going to show up for my tournament.
Butts in seats is good.
You can almost say that this podcast is a direct child of me going to that tournament that you ran.
Yeah, and there will be more in the future. Once we can get back to those tables, and we'll be bringing those tactics, fresh tactics.
So I'd like to thank Probable Koz for joining us today to talk about his experience and expertise.
It's been a pleasure. A lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for giving us another perspective.
So where can anyone looking to see you, your mech spotlights, painting, and battle reports find you?
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube under Probable Koz. You can find me on Instagram under that too. I got links on my channel to all my stuff: Facebook, Instagram, I think Twitter. I don't use Twitter much anymore. Why would anyone use Twitter? I have no idea. It's a cesspool. But I gotta say though, the community, Battletech community on Instagram, if you're not familiar with it, solid people. They will do nothing but celebrate anything that you do. They're very encouraging. So, I mean, I do recommend checking out Battletech stuff and getting involved on Instagram. Because we're on the subject of tournament play and all that, just thank your TO, your tournament organizer. They sacrifice a lot to run events. And as a TO, it sucks. You want to be playing most of the time, but you can't. And if you have a TO that always is running events but never gets to play, maybe, once everything gets back to normalcy, we can start doing events. How about you run the event for them and let them play?
Pass the torch.
Yep. Take turns.
Join us next time where we talk about upgrading your games and mechs from Lost Tech in the year 3039. If you like what you heard today, feel free to support us on Patreon at patreon.com/themechbaypodcast.com. If you'd like to talk to us directly, you can join us on our Discord server, which you can find linked on our Facebook page. We have a hobby night going on this Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, so feel free to join us. If you have any questions about running a Battletech tournament or just want to chat with us, you can reach us on Facebook at the Mechbay Podcast, or you can email us at themechbaypodcast@gmail.com. Thanks, everyone, and remember to keep your coolant flushed and your